And the Serie A season is finally a wrap after, well, just about 12 months. Richard checked out early after Juve won the title, had no interest in the rest of the season, took a well-deserved vacation. I got the State of Play Pod boys with me to go through and hand out all of the awards. So let's have a sit down.
That's a little bit better. It is a stunner from Fabio Quagliarella. Top again for Dzeko, who's in for Roma and scores.
Ciao ragazzi, and welcome to Serie A Sit Down Review Della Madonnina. I'm Frank Crivello. Richard Carmen's not here, but we have brought the gentleman from the State of Play Pod, earning his first cap, the producer and host of State of Play Pod, Martino Puccio. Ciao, Martino.
Hello, Frank. Hello, Richard, if you're watching somewhere, and everyone else in the chat. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting us on. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for stepping in and joining us and earning his third cap with the Serie A Sit Down, the co-founder, co-host, and digital media manager of the State of Play Pod, co-founder of AC Milan Brothers, featured on Guardian, AS Roma English, These Footy Times, and International Champions Cup, Matthew Santangelo. Ciao, Matthew.
Ciao, Frank. Thanks for having me back on for the third time. I feel like I'm maybe squeezing into Mancini's plans for next Euro. So yeah, I got 3 caps under my belt. Feeling pretty good, but it's glad to be back on.
He needs fullbacks. Can you play fullback?
Hey, I'll play wherever it takes me.
I won't play fullback. I don't play defense. And true to form, my 8-year-old son doesn't play defense either. Evan Morris, George Widmer checking in. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We have a lot to unpack. I mean, really, there were 2 match weeks or match days since we last left you, and really all that's left to talk about are a couple of topics that we're going to hammer away pretty quickly. Genoa survives the drop. It ended up being pretty straightforward. They beat Hellas Verona. Lecce and Parma turned out to be quite the show. Parma ending up winning 4-3, but nonetheless, Lecce goes down with Brescia and Spal. Martino, will start with you. I think we had Genoa had just enough talent to survive this, but Lecce, certainly made it interesting. And if you're going to go down, entertain us, and that's what they did.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's definitely disappointing. I know a lot of people that were rooting for Lecce to stay up, and a lot of people are just tired of Genoa in general. I know a lot of Milan fans for extenuating circumstances. But look, yeah, they made it thrilling. 3-4 Parma, again, kind of flashes of when Menez had that back heel as well. Whenever you see all those goals in a matchup with Parma. And then again, you're right, like Genoa they always just have enough to stay afloat. And kind of surprised a little bit by Hellas giving up 3 because they've been so stout defensively, in my opinion, all season. And to see them give up 3, you thought it would have been a little bit tighter for most of it, but a couple red cards in there as well. So yeah, typical say, yeah.
Matt, I'm always a big fan of conspiracy theories and probably have seen from my tweets and some of the things that I've said on this podcast. Ivan Juric had a couple of stints there at Genoa, maybe still enjoys the city, still enjoys the club, and now he's manager of Hellas Verona. Anything in there that suggests that maybe he wanted to do his old employer a solid?
It's possible, right? I think there's certain clubs that there's certain clubs over the years that just always flirt with relegation, flirt with the drop, and Chievo, I know, was a team that always did that, and I think when we look to the beginning of the year, it's funny because we're talking about the 2 different Veronas, right? We have Chievo and Hellas, the city rivals, and I think when me and Martino did our season preview, I think I had Hellas Verona going down because I didn't think they would be this organized out the back. They had a lot of unknown names, Kumbula, Amarat, a couple other players in the squad that we'll get into, I'm sure. But they've risen to the occasion, and they were even a Europa League contender. I think they overthrew Cagliari at one point as the surprise team of the year. They had a little falling off out of the restart, which is, again, I think something that happened with a lot of clubs, and they weren't quite able to pick it up, but they survived. They're in there another season, and I think Juric, all things considered, did a pretty decent job. And of course, he's able to keep his former employer afloat as well, which I'm sure Preziosi really appreciates.
Yep. And Davide Nicola, of course, manager of Genoa. We all remember the job he did bringing Crotone out of the drop, a few years ago. So he's got a little bit of experience at this as well. So Lecce go down, and there are going to be some players that are going to be there for the taking that are going to find work remaining in Serie A. Filippo Falco is certainly going to attract some attention. Riccardo Saponara is a Serie A journeyman at this point, probably going to stay. As bad as he was, Kuma Babakar may end up somewhere with a Serie A team because he may end up having compromising pictures of club presidents and managers, for any other reason. God, he was terrible when he joined Lecce. And then you have Gianluca Lapadula. So there's a handful of guys here that certainly are going to find new homes. Brescia, it's well done. Yep. Who's that?
Gabriel, keeper.
Gabriel, the goalkeeper, for sure. And then you have Brescia. We know about Sandro Tonali. There's a couple of other players in there in the mix that could possibly. Ernesto Torregrossa was really good. Patania's leaving Spal. Highlight. I mean, out of the three that are facing the drop, maybe some of these players here. Martino, start with you. Give me a couple players out of those three facing the drop, and where you think they'd fit.
Yeah, so I think Torregrossa is probably the one that impressed me the most, because Donnarumma was actually the guy when Brescia was coming up that he was supposed to be the one making that kind of impact for them, and that could have possibly kept them up in the top flight for another year. But it just wasn't that. But every time we faced them, or anytime I watched them on the TV or ESPN Plus, it was him that was stepping up. So I don't know. Like, sometimes you could see him maybe going to another squad like Sassuolo does. Do they get rated potentially somehow? Is that like a name they just pluck out of nowhere? Because they have Francesco Caputo scoring all these goals too, So what if De Zerbi wants to work his magic on him there? So I just think him. So maybe Gabriel as well. I just think there's so many good goalkeepers, and now we see how impactful they are. I think a lot more people are understanding that you could pick up 2 to 3 points here and there each match week if you have a great performance. So I think he's another guy as well.
Yep. Matt, how about you? A couple players from the three facing the drop that you'd like to see stay in Serie A, and where you think they best fit.
Yeah, I think, Martino covered a handful of names there. I think they're all great shouts. And it's funny, too, because we talked about, Empoli, where they were a team that got relegated last year. And, of course, obviously, Milan got Ismail Benacer from them. They got Rad Krunic. Hama Junior Traore went to Sassuolo. So there's some talent in that squad. And, of course, as you mentioned, Caputo for €7.5 million, I believe, had a breakout season. So there's certainly value in a lot of these relegated sides, despite them making the drop, that can really make a difference for those teams that maybe lack depth, or they need another defender. Even Sabelli's another one who I thought was really good for Brescia at times. Balotelli. I know everyone was banking on the Alfredo Donnarumma Balotelli tandem to maybe keep Brescia up. Maybe they'll score some goals. They'll let in a ton, but they'll be able to at least shock some people. And I'm actually shocked that Lecce didn't pull this off, because they stole points from Juve, Inter, Napoli. They were a team that really contested really heavily against some of the top clubs, and you thought they were maybe going to do it. But yeah, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things to watch here, is a lot of these teams, aside from Tonali, of course, he'll obviously demand a big fee and a lot of attention. Inter and Milan seem to be fighting it out for him. But there's going to be a lot of these players that when you look back to, the market, and then when the season starts, you're going to look, where did this player go? Where is this? Oh yeah, like he was a huge contributor. And when it comes down to the strikers too, I just want to briefly touch Caputo. When you have a player like a Lapadula, for instance, a journeyman who played at Milan, he played at some of these other clubs, and he had, I think, 11 goals in 25 appearances for Lecce, you maybe put him in a team that has a little bit more supporting cast. And maybe he is a player who can get 13 to 14. We saw what he did at Pescara years ago, winning the Capocannoniere down there. So there's definitely some value in some of these relegated sides. Yeah,
for sure. I'm on the same page. I think that the goalkeepers, Gabriel is a great shout. I think Joranen was very good for Brescia. I think that there were a lot of games at Brescia were closer in because of him. And I mean, it was a glaring difference in how that team defended when Andonaci was in goal for the space of a couple of games. Granted, one of them was against Atalanta. That's just going to happen. But They looked a lot less organized. I mean, my God, when you have Nikola Kalinic bossing the 18-yard area against you, you're not very good. And then, so Joronen is a guy that I think isn't going to have any trouble finding work if there's a goalkeeper that's interested in him, or if there's a team that's interested in his services as a goalkeeper, I should say. And I think that I'm on your side. I love the Torregrossa shout. I think that he's that striker that I think has the chance to be Francesco Caputo next season, depending on if he can land in the right spot. So I think some of these mid-table clubs that are going to be desperate for striker help are certainly going to, inquire of his services. So, definitely like all of those things that are being said there. So let's move on to the other race that was settled, and it involved individual players, the Capocannonieri. Ronaldo does not score against Cagliari, although he went out of his way to try, and Alessio Cragno went out of his way to make sure he didn't. And you had Ciro Immobile, of course, who scored at midweek to put him on 35, put Ronaldo on 31. Juve makes the decision, and I think, they did this with Ronaldo's blessing, obviously, that it was not important for him to play against Roma to try to score 5 goals and to try to burn himself out when there's a big Champions League game coming up against Lyon. So Ciro Immobile is Capocannonieri, 36 goals. I'm doing victory laps on that. I'm doing victory laps on saying Pioli was going to be a great manager for Milan. I'm too fat to be doing all these victory laps. I'm actually really tired. I'm glad the season is over. But anyway, Ciro Immobile ties Gonzalo Higuain's record. Matt, 36 for Immobile, 36 for Higuain. Who did it better?
I'm going to say it's Napoli, not Napoli, because Higuain from Napoli. And the reason why I say that is because obviously there's the discrepancy or the difference in penalties, right? I think, 36 goals, only 3 of them I recall are penalties. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's 33 goals from open play. I know that Napoli side, he was involved with Maurizio Sarri. They had a ton of players in that squad that were very good. But it was kind of the perfect fit for him. And I know Lazio, they had just a breakout year. Now I know with Immobile, he's done this before. He's proven he could be a goal scorer who can score by the bulk. He did it Torino. He did it, but Lazio, many years. I think they're approaching their all-time leading scorer. I believe he maybe even is their leading scorer, or is approaching that right soon. So it's for me. I think no one's diminishing what Immobile accomplished. A sensational feat, and I think what maybe will give him more credibility and more people leaning in his camp is the fact that he outscored everyone. He got the golden boot across the board. It was he surpassed Lewandowski, he surpassed Ronaldo, he surpassed Messi. When you do those sorts of things, I don't care if you do 12 penalties, 50 penalties, 20 penalties, that's going to stand out quite a bit. And I think ultimately the one thing that would have maybe solidified his status on the world stage would have been his performance at the now canceled Euro. I think that would have been something that can really solidify his status. But as far as the seasons go, I'm going to go with Higuain, but I think there's nothing you could take away from Immobile. He's been fantastic.
Bob Bleck says, Frank, what's the lottery numbers if you're that good at predicting? If I knew the lottery numbers, I wouldn't be doing this. Okay, I promise you. So I guess it only relates to certain Calcio takes. So Martino, who did it better?
Higuain. Look, also, I think it's just the way the league was working this year, too. The Juve allowed 43 goals. That is the second highest all time for a Serie A Scudetto winner. I think that just tells you where the league's at right now. I think overall it's not as strong as it was a few years ago, and certainly not as strong as it was, back when even Luca Toni was doing it, right? Getting over 30. And we talked about the statistic that pops up all the time. How many guys is a very small amount of guys who have scored over 30 goals in the league's history since like 1960, right? We had 2 this year. And it was inflated by penalties. And it's no disrespect. You still have to score those penalties at the end of the day. I'm happy you look like a genius because you picked Immobile over it. But at the end of the day, to me, it's just if anyone's played, you know how difficult it is to just score in open play. And in that league, and, for me, it's just Higuain. And it's no disrespect to Immobile. And to Matt's point, like outscoring all those guys too. I mean, kudos to you. You still have to score at the end of the day, and he stepped up. Just do it next summer, please. That's all I care about. Please, just do it then.
I also think I just want to add real quick. I also think
Good.
with Immobile, it's another fascinating thing too, is that he had 9 assists. Like that's a lot for a striker too. You know, I think if you look down the board of the strikers who were kind of neck and neck with him, I know Ronaldo maybe had a handful of assists, some of different variety, but in terms of goal contribution, like Immobile had a fantastic year, and he's going to have one for the record books for sure. Obviously, all the Ronaldo fanboys are going to look to Ronaldo because he's Ronaldo. But and I think that maybe can take away some of his spotlight. You know, when we look back on this year, but at the same time, because again, Ronaldo has 30-something goals. He was the only player to do it, I think, in the top, La Liga, Premier League, and Serie A. So he's got all these sorts of stats and facts to back him up. But again, 2 fantastic seasons, and I'm glad that these sorts of seasons are coming out from these sorts of players, because then it's kind of changing the unfair stereotype that maybe outsiders of Calcio have of Serie A being defensive, boring, not enough goals. And as you can tell, it was one of the biggest and most potent goal scoring seasons in recent memory, especially with, of course, Atalanta as well.
Sure. I'm going to just play devil's advocate a little bit here. I mean, I have no problem with you saying Higuain. I'm not going to fight anybody that's going to say Higuain's was more impressive. It took a hat trick against Frosinone on the last day, to get to that 36 number. The next highest scorer that season was Paulo Dybala at 19. Okay, so Ciro Immobile had to achieve this mark with Cristiano Ronaldo breathing down his neck, at 31. That's not, we're talking about, one of the best players of the last 20 years, and certainly someone that's going to eat at the table among the greatest to ever play this game. So that's where I would want to say that, okay, penalties, they're part of the game. They're going to happen. And did Immobile have an abundance of penalties? Yes. Did Ronaldo have an abundance of penalties? Yes. But, Higuain didn't really have a challenger, when he stepped in and got his 36. Immobile had Ronaldo chasing him down, and at one point, for 30 minutes, Ronaldo pulled ahead of him, in the same game. So, so to be able to do that, and for me, it just made sense to pick Immobile at the beginning of the season, because you're talking about a Lazio team that added Manuel Azzari on the right wing, which was probably the most perfect fit for a transfer that you could have asked for when you're taking a look at how it all panned out, or how the summer was going. Sergej Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto weren't going to suck 2 seasons in a row, and then they had contributions from other positions. So I felt like Lazio was going to be a high-scoring team this season, and who's going to benefit but Ciro Immobile, because we've seen him do it before. I struggle with trying to decide who did it better. I'm going to just say Immobile, and just to be different from what you guys said, and I've got no problem with what you guys said at all. Mm-hmm. But I'm only saying it because CR7 was right there and was breathing down his neck the whole time, especially when this season restarted. So
do you think that helped him though? So like when your competition brings out the best in people, right? And I think that's something that is always kind of said. So like if they're pushing each other, kind of like Messi and Cristiano did for much of their primes, they were just reaching new heights that way. Do you think that kind of impacted this race? Like if Cristiano wasn't there, do we think Immobile gets the 36? Is he pushing for it? Because you could see sometimes in some of these games, he was gunning for that record and he wanted it. And I'm not taking away from him. I'm just saying, like, I'm genuinely asking. I think it might have been a factor in it.
I think that there is some truth to that for sure. Because I think whenever we had, Messi at Barcelona and Ronaldo at Real Madrid, and then they were playing, one was playing Tuesday, the other was playing Wednesday in the Champions League. It's all right. The guy on Wednesday can't wait to get out there because he wants to better what the guy did on Tuesday. So I definitely think that there's some truth to that. I think competition, for a scoring title or anything else is definitely going to motivate you. So, no problem with that take whatsoever. Can we stop having Ronaldo take free kicks, please? He stopped, didn't he? So a good take. I like that. So, I mildly edge Ciro Immobile for the reasons that I say. So, but certainly not taking away from the season that Gonzalo Higuain had. So penalties, let's just transition into that because that's definitely a talking point with this season. And, the guys at IFTV had a graphic showing that, Serie A practically lapped the field when it comes to the major European leagues in terms of penalties awarded and taken and so forth. So is this a bad look for Serie A, or is it, hey, those are penalties, they have to be called? Matt.
It's tough because I think there's so many obviously penalties that are maybe taken away and were given via VAR. And for me, I think the biggest thing that kind of contributed towards, look, there's going to be the bulk of them. I would say probably 75 to 80% of them. You're going to like, okay, like these are clear cut penalties, guys down, and clear handball. Obviously we know the league's issue with that the entire year, so he's probably got like a tenth of them himself. But as far as the penalties go, I think that the biggest focus is going to be, well, why is it so much distant from some of these other leagues? Again, you have to look at it with the Bundesliga a little bit differently because there's less games or less teams. But even then, if they were just clear cut beyond that. So what was the factor for that? And I find that a lot of it was just, maybe the issues with the handball, coming into play. I know that there was a ton of them that affected the Milan games. Obviously since the restart, Milan had good and more fortune and good luck, but I think that was something that's going to contributed to it. I'm not saying it was some of the conspiracy theory. I know, Frank, you talked about that off the top. As something that say, hey, let's try and get more goals injected into this league. Let's get more attention. At the same time, I think the benefits from it. I anticipate that it'll regress to the mean next year. I think certain teams that are very offensively adept will create chances, and when you create chances, you make things happen. You get those penalty situations. Yep. You get those sorts of instances that come up, and I think it's probably going to be one of those years. And next year, we'll see a little bit more of a drop off.
Sure, Martino.
I think knowing there's a lot of idiots on Twitter, I think that it affects their perception of it because they just think it's a farmers league, and they know the history, right? There's a lot of dark shadow skeletons in the closet in this league, right? We've had scandals. Our dominant champion as well. Like, we know what they did. And even Milan, you go back to the 80s, we got relegated too for it. We're not like, scot-free on this scenario. But look, it hurts because at the end of the day, like, if you have to constantly each match question whether or not something was or wasn't a handball, when usually years past, everyone was mostly in agreement on what a handball was. Now no one knows. And that's an issue that we only see in Italy. And for me, it hurts because at the end of the day, if we want more fans watching this league, if we want it to grow, we got to have transparency. We got to have rules that make sense. And for me, it just didn't make sense. And then it puts stains on records like Immobile and what Cristiano were doing, right? Because no one really wants to see that many penalties. No one does. I even feel like some of the players, right? Because you love it when you get them, and then you hate them when you don't. So at the end of the day, I think it hurts them. And my question is this: there's a short turnaround to this new season. How are they going to figure this out? Like, are they gonna make this change out of nowhere and what the perception of a handball is now? Because I think that's a big question mark.
If I have to give credit, though, to the referees, by and large, as much as the volume of penalties that we think are ticky-tack handballs, they've at least been consistent in calling all of them penalties. Sure. There might be the stray one or two that said, well, how come you didn't call this? And you're going to have that everywhere. So, so at a minimum, I think you have to credit at least the consistency, whether, if it's a consistent mistake to keep making that call. And then to Matt's point, you got so much attacking football now going on in Serie A that penalties are going to get created out of it. When you look at the way Atalanta play Napoli, Lazio, maybe Napoli aren't the Saudi ball that they used to be. They certainly aren't under Gattuso. Roma with the way they do things, Milan, of course, the last several games under Pioli. I mean, you're going to attack, you're going to go at people, you're going to create penalties. And then it also speaks maybe, in terms of a bad look, the bottom third of this league is really bad. I mean, the quality is poor. And the three teams that are going down, they're going down because their defenses are horrible. Okay. I mean, Lecce gave up 85, Brescia gave up 79, Spal gave up 77. There's no coincidence there that those are the three going down. And you had Genoa at 73, fourth worst, that survived. So, so there are some poor defenses in this league that has also contributed to a spike in the goals in this league too. So, you've got the combination of all of those things working. And if you have bad defenses, they're going to make bad mistakes. They're going to react. They're going to be caught trying to sprint to run down a guy, and they're going to run him down to the penalty area, and they're going to get there late, and the referee's going to point to the spot. So, I think the combination of those things maybe, and then how the handball is interpreted without intensively watching the other leagues, you might have to justify that this many penalties just because of how everything is being interpreted. So I'd like to see it go down. I'd like to see a regression next season. I'd like to see games getting won in open play. But we'll see what happens with that. So, moving on, and just a final thing at the top. We know the Champions League places are Juventus, Inter, Atalanta, and Lazio. We know that the Europa League places are Roma and Milan in the group stage and Napoli qualifying. Now, I have not done my homework on UEFA to find out if Napoli somehow win the Champions League and qualify as holders, if that bumps Lazio into the Europa League and it bumps Milan into qualifying, if they're trying to keep it at a max of 4 teams or not. I didn't have the time to take a look at that. If somebody listening to this podcast or watching,
I know the scenario. So you can send 5 teams from your league to the Champions League. So, but the funniest scenario, in which I'm sure Roma fans would love this. Roma's still in the Europa League. Napoli's still in the Champions League. If they both win those tournaments, Napoli wins the Champions League, Roma wins the Europa League, 4th place gets knocked to Europa League. So can you imagine Roma fans finally winning a European trophy and it gets Lazio knocked back down into the Europa League? That's a scenario that could happen. So yeah. I'm
glad you did the homework on this, because I just didn't have time to.
And Milan's in the preliminary rounds, by the way, because Napoli's automatically in the group because they
Is that
won
what
Coppa
happened?
Italia. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Milan had to finish ahead of Roma in order to get in the group stage. So we are going to be playing Cracovia and those types of teams again.
Sticky
FC, yeah,
whatever that team was.
That's right. Yeah.
Sweet. I can't wait. Oh my! We had a sellout crowd at the San Siro to play Sticky, and whoever the other god awful team was, that was brilliant. So Richard and I touched on this last week, and I wanted to get your guys' perspective on this. Juve makes it 9 in a row. So your takes. Richard and I just looked at this as maybe the weirdest. This is the weirdest championship I could remember, not even just because of COVID, but because when the restart happened, Juve were dropping enough points to make this interesting, and you had 3 possible contenders that didn't want it.
Matt, you can go.
Matt?
Oh, yeah. This is I tweeted about this, a couple weeks ago, that this was out of this entire dynasty that they've built, spanning 3 different coaches. Obviously, Conte, it started with Allegri in between, and now Maurizio Sarri. This was the most beatable Juve, and obviously you can tell, right? Because I think Maurizio Sarri, many people are saying he did a pretty good job, all things considered. The fact that he didn't have the players that he needed to play his style of football. Now, whether or not, you can say that's something that should excuse them is another conversation to be had. Again, next year, they can come out, they can be that much better. They can come back and be the team that's much more stout defensively, don't drop as many points, and maybe they just run away with the league, like they have been in most of these years. But, when I look at Juve, I think it's one of those things where, with them being the most beatable in years, a lot of those other teams fumbled the bag, they dropped the ball, and it's something telling about the actual, not the quality of players, because I think those other teams have shown that they do have, for the most part, on par quality with Juve, at least this year. It was a mentality thing. It was one of those things where, like, even when Juve, they were the only team that, even when they just weren't playing their best, they just found a way to bend but not break. And we saw that after the restart. And I talked about it. I know me and Martino talked about it at length on our podcast and some of the other podcasts we've been on. that was going to be the biggest, most fascinating thing coming out of the break was which teams stumble, which teams can find a way to just navigate the first couple rounds. And we saw that in Lazio were always behind. Inter, they have their dysfunction now, obviously with Conte. They were dropping points. And Juve just seemed to be the team that it was sloppy, it was gritty, it was kind of, in more ways Italian fashion, right? A team that's not always attractive the way they win, but the World Cup being one of them, but they found a way to get the job done, and they wound up winning the league by 1 point over Inter. And you look at it and you're like, wow, 1 point. Inter made this, I think, the closest title race, I think, since 2010, 2011, if I'm correct. So it really didn't feel like that it was that close for the entire stretch, maybe since the Napoli Juve of a couple of years ago. So that's going to be interesting to see how Juve build from this. Is it more of a sign that maybe they are ending towards their cycle because football works in cycles, or are they a team that takes this as a reality check and saying, hey, Atalanta, Lazio, Inter, these teams are coming for us. We got to get our act together. And maybe this pushes Juve and motivates them more to go out there on the market, get the players they need, build a team that is ready to sustain this dominance into 10 years. Would be crazy to think that's 10 years of them winning the league if they do it next year. So hopefully it's someone that knocks them off. And of course, I know Martino's wearing the Milan jacket. So if it's Milan, that would be very fitted because they were the last team to win the Scudetto, not named Juve.
I think you're on mute, Frank. I can't hear Frank.
I think you're on mute.
There we are. The man himself said it. If I'd been with Milan from the beginning of the season, we would have won the title. So
it's possible. I think you saw that Juve were so vulnerable at so many times. I think the restart thing, it was so telling.
I have mine too in my closet.
It was so telling that, even when, look what Milan did to Juve, 4-2. You would never.
They haven't been that embarrassed since the Champions League final,
right?
Yeah.
Like,
which I had to bring up.
They would never do that. They would never. Is that down to the cycle? Is it down to the coach? Is it down to someone else just being the team next up? I don't know, but for no one to at least come up there, and I think some people will say, well, if the COVID didn't come up, Lazio would have done it or Inter would have done it. I don't know about that, because until a team actually dethrones them, you have to give them that proper respect as a team that, okay, you have to respect us that we're not going to relinquish this. Until we get beat, you can't give up on us that quickly. And even when Juve had all those injuries, to obviously Chiellini went out, Demiral went out, they were very thin in certain areas, and the midfield is not very strong. Who was it? It was Dybala, Ronaldo, De Ligt carrying that team. So that just proves the point that, if we're going to talk about Juve's season, that even how dysfunctional and how sloppy they've played and unattractive football they've played, they still have Ronaldo, and he's the type of player that can ultimately make the difference. And I think this year you saw that.
Martino, is this the weakest Juventus of the last 9 champions?
I want to say yes. It's in a vacuum watching them every single week. You were just like they're going to win, but that's not the scary Juve. Like, I wasn't scared of them each time Milan played them. Sure. I thought, okay, if we give them a strong, 60, 70 minutes, keep it close. Like, if you just get one, there's points to be had there. When we were facing them, when they had the Marchisio, Pirlo, Vidal, Pogba midfield, it was clear you knew who was the best. This time, I think there were more questions, but they won it. Now, I think they realize that they had those questions and they need to be answered. They already have Kulusevski coming in next year.
Yep.
Are they going to have 2 torn ACLs for center backs again? I don't think so. They're going to fix that right back position. They're going to retool and reload. This is what they do. And some of the other teams here, they don't have Lazio doesn't have a history of reloading and adding to their team. They historically don't do great when they have a condensed schedule. They're going to have to play in the Champions League now on top of that going into next year, right? So for me, it's the same as it's ever been for the past 20 years if we really look at it, guys. There's been 3 teams that have won this title. It's Inter, Milan, Juve. Besides the two Roma clubs that won back-to-back years, oddly enough, when Lazio and Roma both won it, I think it's going to eventually have to come down to one of the Milan clubs to do it, because I feel so bad for Napoli. Napoli was probably one of the best second-place teams I've ever seen in my life in any sport. maybe the 73 win Warriors. I don't know if anyone knows that reference. And the Patriots when they lost to the Giants. But I hate it, man. I think it's going to be 10 again. I just don't see it. And especially with this Conte drama today too with Inter. It's just another wrench in their plans. I just don't see it.
Everyone christened them anti-Juve. They had that great start. They were in first place. Everyone's like, they got Conte, they're building this project, they got all these players, and it's more dysfunction. Like if you're an Inter fan, you're like, and I think that's kind of one of those things that we look at as a Milan fan, right? As Milan fans, here in general is, let's say what you want. Looking at the way the season is, Milan would have liked to be in the top 4, no doubt about it. But they have at least some sort of guarantees for next season in the sense that they don't have this drama with their coach. Mm-hmm. They don't have this sort of blow up. Okay, but I have certain players in the squad that maybe are looking around and saying, I joined here for Conte and his project, and now Conte may leave. And then you got Allegri coming in possibly as a rumor. So you look at all these teams, you look at all these factors, and you're thinking like, Juve are clear cut, in my opinion, the favorite to win it again next year. And it's like, it just keeps going for them. And you touched on some of these additions that they're possibly going to make. Kulusevski's already in. Arthur's in the midfield. That was been a big focus for them over the years. And that's also another wake up call. I think this was the one year where you looked at it and you're like, wow, like Pjanic wasn't the same. Looks like he was declining. He's on his way out. Matuidi, Rabiot looked promising towards the end of the season.
Higuain will leave. Those are massive wages.
So the point I'm trying to make is that, like, I think there was a lot of glaring issues and really reality checks and wake up calls with this winning. It was one of those things where they had to grind to get this done, and it didn't look pretty, but they got it done. But it's one of those things where the way Juve have been building over the years, you almost expect them to say and have like this sort of like, we're going to go out there. We're going to make sure that none of these teams even come close to us next year. And I think that's what we're going to see.
Well, let's answer Nathan's question here. Who is the closest to dethroning Juve? I mean, you would have said Inter, but now with all this drama with Antonio Conte, I don't know. I mean, I want to say our team. I mean, can Milan carry 12 games of form like this into next season? And can they do that consistency over a 38-game schedule? I love Zlatan. He is always going to have a special place in my heart. He's still 38. I mean, he did some amazing things here. These older players, we got to remember, there was a 3-month break here, okay? And these older players all got to regroup, okay? They're not going to get to do that in a 38-game schedule and Europe and Champions League or Europa League or whatever, and playing every 3. Zlatan is not going to play every 3 days. So Milan are going to have to come up with some other answers. Okay. But I'm encouraged by what I saw. Inter on talent, you look at their roster, they're linked to half of Europe. The combination of all of that, they should be the next in line. I don't know if Lazio can sustain it. Atalanta, you're not hearing anything about any of their players leaving. They could run up and grab this thing. I mean, they absolutely showed. Hell, when they tied Juventus, look what they did when it was 1-1. They took out their 3 best players, put in 3 subs, and took the lead again. I mean, so they've got the ability to do it. I mean, there's potential. Who's closest? Martino.
Well, so I guess if we'll go with like Conte stays with Inter, I think it's Inter. If somehow he leaves, I really do think it's Atalanta. And I was kind of skeptical of him with all these competitions. I wasn't really like that high on them because I think Lazio is going to drop off. I said it. You could ask Matt. Lazio was the team that suffered the most from this break, right? Mm-hmm. They benefit from once a week playing. Now it's a condensed schedule. It's going to be even worse for them coming up, right? Especially with like 5, 6, 7 week break or whatever it is. Who knows with this league? So for me, it's Inter and Atalanta. Atalanta, man. I mean, look, they're just going to reload. And if they have a real shot of beating PSG as well with no Mbappe. You get deeper in the Champions League, that's a lot of money. And for a team that doesn't really need that much money to be successful, they go and get like, a couple of defenders because I think that's the glaring weakness for them. They add more depth. Man, like they have the confidence now. This is 2 seasons in a row, right? This isn't a joke. Like they believe in their system. They believe in everything they're doing. They play Juve very well. They play everybody tough. They're not scared of anyone. They don't have like, that small club mentality that you would think of a team like Atalanta would have. for me, it's them. I really do. And they have to win a trophy eventually, right?
Yeah.
You can't be playing all this great football all the time and nothing to show for it at the end of the day, right? Because we ripped Sardi and his guys for that. We have to hold the standard here for them too.
I think it's Inter. I think it's still going to be Inter. I just like the nucleus, the core they're building. I think the spine, even Handanovic getting up there in age, but Bastone's a stud, in my opinion. They got De Vrij, who's in the prime of his career. Even if they sell Skriniar, like they still have in abundance. They have talent. You have your strikers who are very productive. If they can keep Lautaro Martinez, that's also a big key thing here. But let's say, for example, this whole Conte thing blows up and they part ways, and it is Allegri. I argue that they're maybe better positioned under Allegri. Maybe it's not the exact system because they play two different styles of football.
Mm-hmm.
But Allegri he won it at Milan against odds coming into that position. He won it at Juve multiple times, despite the fans saying, "Oh, we got Allegri, like that's the coach we're going to go with." 2 Champions League finals there. Allegri's proven it. If they get Allegri here, you can argue that they've, in a strange way, probably positioned them to be the anti-Juve and the team that could really jump at them. And the team we haven't even really mentioned here, who has been the closest at beating them over the years, is Napoli. I don't know what Napoli's futures are. Are they a team that they're going to be more on the decline? Are they a team that's going to more flirt with being a top 4 team and just kind of trying to jockey with some of these teams? Because the fact of the matter is they had a lot of their success when the league itself was a little bit thinner in terms of competition. Now you look at the actual top 4 who made this Champions League here. Lazio had 70-something points. Atalanta were one of the highest scoring teams in Europe. Then you had Inter, who had 83 points, who made it a 1-point differential for the Scudetto. So the pack is expanding. The competition's leveling out a bit, which looks good for the league. So I think it's going to really open up the pack in the field to really challenge Juve. And if someone can step in there, I think they can definitely be exposed, especially with possibly Ronaldo having a 1 or 2 years left. I think that can be something that really turns the tides in Italy and allows someone to kind of creep in there and finally knock them off their perch.
Yep. I'm bouncing between Atalanta and Inter because at least at Atalanta, I know what we're getting. We know it's consistent, and their scouting approach is a lot different than everybody else's. They're going to buy who fits what they do. Who the hell knew who Ruslan Malinovsky was before the season started? Okay, that's what they do. All right, and they're going to dig up 2 new guys that none of us heard of, and they're going to go out there and they're going to ball out and they're going to wow us because they fit what they want to do. Okay, so I like the system that they've got, and now they've got it in place. They've had a taste of playing some of the best teams in Europe, and they know they can do it. Inter, the whole thing has to get sorted out, obviously. Napoli, to your 81 million is an awful lot of jack for Victor Osimhen. I've seen him a handful of times. I don't know if he's worth it, but Napoli De Laurentiis apparently thinks that he is. So. And is that hard up to get?
I think that to me, I think that's telling of the situation. I think this entire season has been very difficult for Napoli. Obviously, the whole thing with Ancelotti, they thought, okay, we're getting rid of Sarri, we're getting Ancelotti in there, who's won the Champions League. This is the guy that's they go from being a team that's like, we want to win the league, we want the team that throws Juve, to having that bust up, and then Ancelotti leaves, then Gattuso comes in, he wins a Coppa Italia. But now I'm thinking, they're a team that really you expect them to spend. Like the only team that you really expect in Italy to splash the type of money that they spent on Victor Osimhen is Juventus, right? Because I think a lot of these other teams have been in positions where they can't. But this tells me, with some of the additions they made even in January, Diego Demi, Lobotka, the rumors that Allen may leave. Fabian Ruiz has a ton of interest from Spain. Koulibaly's always been linked to the Premier League. I think there's could be one of those summers of a transition for Napoli. Not saying they're not going to try and compete, but that spine, that core, that foundation that was built under Sarri, I think they're really starting to veer away from that. And you can clearly see it, right? The whole Milik situation, and just in general, the Hamšiks of the world, possibly Heiza, some of these guys, I just don't know what their future holds. And you wonder if it's a year of a transition for them. But I'm not going to rule them out. I've supported Gattuso through anything. And I would love if Gattuso can get Napoli back to being in the conversation for a title.
Sure. if you're spending 81 for Victor Osimhen, you better damn well hope you're getting
You better
Duvan
get it right.
Zapata. You better damn well hope you're getting Duvan Zapata at a minimum.
Yeah.
So,
and the French league's different. We all know how a lot of people perceive the French league and how the production there stacks up to other leagues.
There is an adaptation too. I mean, don't expect this kid to come out like gangbusters in the first 10 games. I don't think it'll happen.
Most expensive African footballer of all time too. I think I read from Bequepe.
Yeah.
Which is another. That's a lot of pressure. Is all I'm saying.
Yep. Pepe, Leao, and now Osimhen and Lille have a lot of money now. But anyway, so that's kind of a little smattering of what's been going on with Serie A and what we think of things. Let's get to Gilia Patate one's question. I don't know what I didn't see this, but Zlatan, MLS, Serie A, silly comparisons. Did you guys catch this?
Yeah, it's Taylor Twellman.
Oh, the Taylor Twellman thing?
Yeah. So you saw that one then?
Yeah, I did.
I understood where Taylor was coming from, but it just it's such a broader topic than he thought, Like it's not just Zlatan simply in Serie A versus MLS. It's the players that Zlatan is with in Serie A compared to MLS as well, right? Like who was I don't even know the best player on the Galaxy next to him, right? I'm not a fan of the MLS, but I could tell you this. There was a handful of guys that might have been better than Hakan Çalhanoğlu in the restart of COVID football. Mm-hmm. There weren't many better than him. And you know what? Like when you get guys like that around you, you're going to play fantastic. So.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't care for what he had to say. So
what bugs me? The thing that bugs me the most, and I think this is not something that's just down to Taylor Twellman. Obviously, he's going to be a homer he's going to be very supportive of. He's going to be very pro MLS, pro American soccer. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's this constant okay, Ibrahimovic scores this many goals, or he has this great goal and he's tearing up teams. It's like, are you really going to use Ibrahimovic as like the standard of saying, oh, see, look, Ibrahimovic is going to Serie A and he's tearing it up there. Is MLS? Well, look at the field. Like Ibrahimovic is a player who scored over 500 goals in his career. Ronaldo went to MLS, tore it up, and came back. Are you going to say, yeah, well, it's Ronaldo? He's arguably the best player of all time. So for them to use that as kind of an excuse or an opportunity to say, I don't know if it was just I think a lot of these pundits and analysts and stuff and commentators, they use it just to get a reaction. And that's exactly what he got. And I don't blame him. But we even see it with, I saw Grant Wall too at the restart. I'll never forget this too, where, they talked Mainz and Mainz like 5 goals to Leipzig. And they were saying, he was like, well, if the team in MLS conceded like this, they would never hear the end of it. I'm like, yeah, a team like Leipzig was challenging for the title of a major league. Like it's apples to oranges. It's not even close. So when I look at this, I'm saying, look, I like MLS. I have no problem watching. I do enjoy it for the league it is. But why is it always some sort of comparison? Yeah. You're comparing a league that's in terms of the years it's been around in its infancy stage, 20-something years compared to some of these other major leagues who have built such a long history and culture over 100 years. Like
1899,
a golden era of MLS to compare to what we had in the 90s in Serie A and some of these other major leagues. So it's a moot point. It's not even a conversation. I think, again, it's just a reaction, and he got a reaction, and more power to him. But I think it's just silly. I think it comes off as being something that you're just not really taking it seriously. You're trying to kind of get a reaction, get a response that kind of yields a lot of attention and engagement. And I think that's what he got.
With all due respect, because I want to see MLS continue to be successful. We want football to be successful in this country, our football.
Of course.
A mid-table team in the English Championship could come in here and win MLS. Okay. So yeah. So you want to, if we bring in a team to come and have an exhibition against the MLS All-Stars, if that team actually gave a shit, they would beat the MLS All-Stars at least 6-0. Okay. So we need to stop.
It's also funny when they play too.
Yeah.
The average player in MLS compared to the average player in the Premier League, it's not even close. It's literally not even close. If you watch any of these games from this MLS's back tournament, and you're like, these guys are pros, and there's nothing against them, but the standard is so low, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's leagues across Europe that have just a ridiculous standard of being just low. It's like, okay, this guy in some sort of Norwegian league is scoring 40 goals, and then he goes to a major league and he can't produce the same way. Like, it happens. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's telling to me when you see a guy like Joseph Martinez, who scored 6 or 7 goals in 3 seasons at Torino, a team that's kind of always been middle of the pack / competing for a Europa League spot. He can't even get minutes. He goes to Atlanta United and is scoring 60 goals in 65 or 70 games and winning the Golden Boot in the league by a wide margin. So what does that say about it? Is the quality, the difference in quality. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't think we'd have to answer that today, but I wanted to leave that tweet alone. But Gilia Patate, thank you for bringing it up. So, so we hit on a smattering of things here. Serie A, talking about the champions, talking about the contenders, talking about those relegated, the Capocannoniere race. I was going to say it. So now let's get on to the awards. We'll start with the dubious, the crap on a cracker 11. And now we call this the crap on a cracker 11 because Richard randomly said this about, I can't remember who even said it about a couple of years ago. And we just decided that's what we're just going to call our flop 11. Now, we do this a little bit differently. Like places like goal.com will put players that signed and make a big money move. You know, think of Gabigol as an example. And they'll put him in the flop 11 because he didn't play. Well, he didn't play. All right. If he would have played and if he would have sucked, then yeah, I'll put him in. Mm-hmm. But he didn't play. So you have to play and you have to play a healthy amount of games in this league and you have to prove that you were shit. Okay. To make this 11. That's the rule. Okay. So this is how we're going to do it. Now, the goalkeeper might come under some scrutiny and come under some debate, but this is who we chose. We chose Mattia Perin of Genoa. And that's and it's almost like a default pick because when you're looking at the goalkeepers on all of the bad teams, and we talked about this, Joronen and Gabriel and Letitia, Thiam, this Demba Thiam came in. If they had this guy Spal had this guy all season, they would have had half a chance. Musso, who we'll get to in a minute. Some of these players, some of these goalkeepers from some of these bad teams all were good goalkeepers, made a lot of saves, and their defenses would have given up a hell of a lot more if they didn't have them around. So Mattia Perin gets in there by default. You guys have a different idea of that, or are we on the right track here?
The only player maybe I would consider swapping for, because I think he did play a healthy amount of games in comparison to, he started the season and then Cragno came back and took over his position. That being Robin Olsen, I think. Yeah,
but Olsen was all right.
He was all. That was the reason
bad.
why I'm kind of on the fence because he was around and he was the goalkeeper when Cagliari had that nice start. So and then he kind of was brought to the bench and Cragno came in and Maran got fired and they brought in Zenga and the wheels fell off. So I think it's more maybe you would agree with me on this, Frank, and maybe you could clear this up. Putting Perin here is not more of it. It's not an indictment of him and his performances. It's just a simple reason that the pack was just good. There's a lot of good goalkeepers in Serie A. There's some like an elite 5 or 6 that performed really well above everyone else. And even those middle of the road guys and some of on the teams that got relegated were just strong, and they were just a little bit stronger than Perin was.
And that's why we have him here. I mean, all of the other goalkeepers that you would probably potentially tab for this spot were all good. I mean, this was a great season for all the goals that got scored. And said, this was a great season for goalkeeping, Martino.
Yeah, no, it was. And you know what? The thing with Perin too, and kind of why I like to put guys like this in this position, you expect more from him.
Yep.
This was a guy that we thought, potentially before like Gigio Donnarumma came along, like this could have been a successor for Buffon, right?
Yep.
There's been injury history there. We know that. I mean, hell, even Juve bought him at one point. It still didn't make any sense to me. But we're here now, and you're right. Like we've had guys on a lot worse teams this year that have stepped up and did a lot better than he did. And it's not an indictment, and we're not saying he's terrible, but relative to his expectation and his performance, he deserves that spot, unfortunately.
Like he's not like he gets this nod, but the audience
he's in by default.
Understand he didn't have Kepa like season. Like he wasn't like Kepa bad. It
Oh,
was just he was
God,
the
yeah.
worst amongst a pack of really good goalkeepers. That's really all there is to it.
Agreed. We're doing a 3-5-2 formation with this with our crap on a cracker 11. So our back three is Ragnar Klavan of Cagliari, Nenad Tomovic of Spal, and Fabio Lucioni, the Italian Vinnie Jones of Lecce. That guy looks like Vinnie Jones. But Ragnar Klavan, there's a reason why Jurgen Klopp couldn't get rid of him soon enough.
We saw the other day.
Yep. Nenad Tomovic is he's bad wherever he's gone. And Lucioni, I mean, we had the UK Lecce guys on, and they, when we had an interview with them, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I'm trying to paraphrase what they said. They basically said he's not a Serie A player. And when, Lecce gave up a metric butt ton of goals this season, somebody in that defense has to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue against it. It's just, look, man, it was awful. I thought I would never see a worse defense than Pescara a few years ago when they came up. I think the season after they sold like Immobile and Verratti and all those guys. I think Lecce topped it. I think they did. It was that bad, and he deserves a spot. There's nothing more else to say. I mean, we're just beating a dead horse at this point, right? So easy selection.
Let me ask you something though.
Sure.
And this is going to be blasphemous if you're a fan of Uruguay and Atletico Madrid and Diego Godin.
I think he played well. I think he came back and played well.
I think he was serviceable at best, but I don't think that he stunk it up. I don't think he was as bad as the three we're talking about.
But in comparison, I do, to your point, how goal does it, right? In terms of expectation. Yeah. You think Godin's going to come in, he's going to be like, wow, we got a team, that player that's been, to a Champions League finals, has won the league, that you expected so much from him. I mean, I agree, he probably wasn't that bad.
Then a Skriniar, then
pulling the line, he's close in my opinion. Opinion.
I'm not against the idea, but I don't think that he was that poor where I have to put him in here.
There was other just bottom of the barrel guys.
Yeah, you've got so many bad defenders in this league that it's really easy to find three before even talking about a guy like Diego Godin. We have wing backs, and this is going to kind of tie into something we talked about before we went on air. On the right, Lorenzo Di Silvestri of Torino. On the left, Nicola Muro of Sampdoria. I mean, this is just the indictment right now of Italian fullbacks or wingbacks, and both of these gentlemen are Italian. This is going to be the problem for Mancini when he puts his team out there in qualifiers. We're not strong at fullback. Di Lorenzo is our best fullback right now. And dare I say, Davide Calabria over his last couple of performances would be in that conversation too. When that's what we're looking at for fullback or for wingback, we're in some trouble in that position. But Di Silvestri is one of those guys that I feel like he just has the skill set to take it and run, and he doesn't. And Muro was just on a bad Sampdoria team that found enough form under Ranieri in the restart to survive. I thought both of these guys, they're far more capable than what they delivered this season.
Matt, you can go first.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think in Muro too, he was a player that came up, some years ago. It had a lot of promise, a lot of potential that you kind of looked at like, all right, Muro may be a player that goes to a more of a top club, more or less upper echelon club, but it's just one of those players who was just like a Caprari instance, like one of those players that like kind of when you were younger you thought was going to be down for big things, and yeah, I think Muro's been, he hasn't been good to say the least. Yep. But Biraghi, you can maybe put him up there too. It's tough to find many that are worse than these two, but in terms of the fullback position that Italy possesses, it's very grim, and that's why I think it's going to be interesting to see who can jump in for Mancini at the Euros next summer. I
think it's a fit issue with Biraghi. I think he's a wingback. Yeah, I think he's a wingback, but I think that he plays to a certain set of tactics that Antonio Conte is an everybody defends kind of manager. Mm-hmm. Biraghi would like to play wingback and would like to be free and would like to just pump in 25 crosses and hope one of them hits a striker's head. And not have to worry about defending because he's got a left center left center back behind him that will cover for him, and he's got a midfielder that'll shift over and defend behind him. Biraghi wants a free role. He doesn't want to have to come back and do all of this extra dirty work. So that's why he probably stands out as a bust in Conte's Inter system. He strikes me as a guy that wants to be more free in his role. So
yeah. I guess I'll just comment on it. Look, I think Torino as a whole were very disappointing for me.
Oh, yeah.
So Di Silvestri, in my opinion, I mean, look, this is also a team that sent us back Diego Laxalt because he was not even close to up to par over there too. I think he could have even been in consideration for this as well.
Sure.
Especially if anyone's seen him play for Uruguay, like it's a completely different player. And it's fascinating to see that. But again, it's just really funny that this is just not your father's Italy. This is not your father's Italy's defense. That you're really not going to say. And it kind of breaks my heart to see all the Italian names that we're putting up here. That it's kind of like a no doubt that we have to put some of these guys in here. So
right.
I think for me, Di Silvestri is probably the most bang on one. I think at least Sampdoria found some of that form, but Torino, man. I mean, look, please take Giampaolo.
Yep. Another Torino man makes it in the 3-man midfield. Sasa Lukic was terrible this season. Daniele De Sena of Brescia makes this team, and Alessandro Murgi of Spal also makes this team. Now, De Sena, I think this is just an issue of a guy that the game has just passed him. He's a Serie B player now. Every time, when the handful of times that I got to watch Brescia and saw De Sena in the lineup, I was like, here's a guy with some experience that could kind of maybe have this thing steady and that sort of thing. Never got that from him. Murgia, I mean, when Lazzari left, Murgia had to be among those to be counted on to provide the service for Patania. Just didn't do it. I can't think of 3 guys worse than this.
No, I really can't. I mean, I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could probably find players that maybe perhaps I expected more from and that just underachieved. But yeah, I think when you look at this actual, the formation of this 11, they're going to be on more, provincial / bottom of the table teams. It's just all there is to it. And Berto was a player too. I thought was going to be a little bit more of an improved player. I think I thought he was going to be someone who on loan from Lazio would have, with opportunity, with minutes, maybe get that chance to kind of, progress and move up the ladder. Yeah. But yeah, you're kind of starting to see when you get these players that get the minutes in a Serie A in a top league, and they just simply cannot produce. They cannot withstand it. And you're kind of starting to see that they're not quite the level of prospect that you expected. I think more or less in many ways you can make the comparison to Saponara, right? The hype, the attention that he got, and then he went away, and it's like, this guy is not what we thought he was.
Right. Now let's get to the forwards. There's 2 forwards. Federico Bernardeschi of Juventus and Federico Santander of Bologna make this team. Federico Bernardeschi, okay, I get number 7 is in the team. I get Dybala's in the team, and then Higuain gets the occasional place, but Federico Bernardeschi had 29 league appearances this season under Maurizio Sarri, a man revered for attacking football. And you would think the skill set of a player like Bernardeschi would drool at the chance of playing for a manager like Maurizio Sarri. 29 appearances, 1 goal, 1 assist. And for Federico Santander, there's a reason why they brought in Musa Berro. It wasn't working. I mean, granted, he came on as a substitute in most appearances, but still played a healthy amount. And when you've got Riccardo Orsolini behind you, when you've got Roberto Soriano behind you, when you've got Nicola Sansoni behind you, that's a dream for a striker. And you should be bagging goals left and right with the service that you can get from those 3 guys. These are the 2 forwards that we went with. Any thoughts or any objections or anyone that probably should have been here?
Bernardeschi is a very disappointing player in general. There's just something about him that you just look at him and it's just, he's not cut out for Juve. He's not up to that standard there. I think it hurts him being there. I think we'll see a better version of him if he moves somewhere else, but those wages are ridiculous. And look, that goal he scored was his first since like fall of 2018. It's a long time. And you can't have that when you go over there with that fee. You're getting paid those wages. You play in
and it was a cleanup goal. Yeah. That was his goal.
And I think that was the one to just seal up the title as well, mathematically, because we knew it was really just out of reach. But Yeah, man. Look, Federico Bernardeschi. It's crazy that we see a Juve player in this, right? I mean, it might be the first time in years, right? So for me, I think it was an absolute no-brainer. Yeah, first no-brainer.
Yep.
Matt, you're on mute.
Matt, you're on mute. He doesn't know he's on mute.
You are on mute.
There you go.
Sorry. I had the Frank thing issue there. Yeah,
but my excuse is that I'm old. Okay.
With the 40 million fee that he came over from Fiorentina, I think the expectations were really high. He's played quite a bit for the national team too. So you're thinking a player that gets a good fair opportunity with the national team, makes a big move to Juve. You know what type of player he is now, and I'm not saying that he's not a completely useless player for Sarri. I think we saw what Allegri used him in certain situations in the midfield last year. I think that maybe he's a player that if he wanted to prove himself at Juve, he would have to redefine the way he plays the game. Maybe he's a player that's plays as more of like a wing back or plays as more of a right back or something like that. He would have to learn how to defend, obviously, because we saw what Quadrado did, right? He made that transition. So I think he's that sort of player if he wants to stay at Juve. But I think anyone would agree, the actual decline and drop in production from Fiorentina to Juve, I can't probably count one hand or two fingers the good performances he's had. I think one of them was actually in the Champions League against Atletico Madrid. I think he had a really good second leg, a really good first leg. But overall, it's just very much a big disappointment. And I think this year was very much telling of that he's just not cut out, to Martino's point, for a club like Juve.
Yep. I mean, the only other striker that I would probably argue to be in this conversation is Babacar. When he joined Lecce, did next to nothing. So that's our crap on a cracker 11. Let's get to the good stuff. Team of the season. We went with a 4-2-3-1 formation for this. At City I Sit Down, we like our team of the season to be somewhat functional. So our goalkeeper of the season might be a surprise. It's convenient to say guys like Handanovic, Tarkoja, the guys that are at the top. But Juan Musso of Udinese is our goalkeeper of the season because we talked about good goalkeepers on bad teams. I can only imagine. I mean, and Udinese has a collection of some good players. They've got DePaul. Yeah. Sema came on and did really well. Lasagna came in and scored some goals. Fofana's a talent. Yeah, for sure. But this was a team, let's face it, they were struggling. But Juan Musso, you could count on for 4 to 6 saves a game, it almost seemed like. And I don't know where this Udinese team is without him. They might be flirting with relegation, if not relegated. So he got our nod for goalkeeper of the season. Martino?
Yeah. This was something Matt and I discussed, that we thought Udinese prior to the season was going to be in this conversation for relegation. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, you have a goalkeeper playing like this. It not only takes you out of that conversation, it launches you into a positive conversation. Now, Udinese as a whole, you're right. Like, I like a few of their players. I think they should probably capitalize on some of them. I think DePaul is going to be one of them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, again, and those are not defensive players that we highlighted, right? Yep. And that doesn't help Musso in this scenario. So when we talk about who their best players are and they're not defenders, and he's in team, like, it's a no-brainer and it's fantastic. And, at the end of the day, like, hats off to you if you're pulling off something like that, because it doesn't happen often. And you know what? It's fully deserved, because we've seen guys like Handanovic, Gigio Donnarumma, even, for example, we see them make massive mistakes. I can't really think off the top of my head where Musso really cost Udinese a game by a glaring error.
Matt, Juan Musso, good with it?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's tougher because I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. There's a lot of depth in this league in terms of talented goalkeepers. A lot of young, some more in their veteran years, some in their like, towards the tail end of their career, like Handanovic. But you could have gone Donnarumma. I don't think anyone would have argued with that.
Sure.
I think in my opinion, he has to be on another day. I'll probably go with Donnarumma just because I'm biased, and I think Donnarumma is the best goalkeeper in Italy in terms of just his promise, potential, and everything he's accomplished so far. But I think if you're looking for some variety, or if you're looking for someone who's saying, hey, I'm going to go against the conventional choice here, and I think Juan Musso is very much deserving of that. This beyond the clean sheets that I think he led Serie A in, He was amongst the top in save percentage. He didn't have the supporting cast. It's not like he had a BBC in front of him, like Wojciech Szczesny did, or Samir Donovich had in front of him, where you have a really stout defensive line and you're asked to maybe make 1 or 2 saves in a match. I mean, how many times do we see it, guys, where you're having a team like Milan or Inter or Juve, the goalkeeper's not even contested at anything. He gets a clean sheet. He picks that up. He gets 1 save, and it's a mishit rolling ball to him that he picks up, and there's your save. Like, you can look at Musso the entire season and say, without him, Udinese is not staying up, and it's quite clear that I think he's very much deserving of this recognition, and I think he's a worthy candidate of this nod.
I agree. All right, let's get to our back four. We are going to have Robin Gosens of Atalanta deputized at right back, and that's probably an indictment at how bad right back is in this league. Our center backs, Stefan de Vrij of Inter, Francesco Acerbi of Lazio, and our left back, Theo Hernandez of Milan. We're Milan fans. I mean, Theo Hernandez, when we're talking about a 38-game body of work, we don't want to just talk about the COVID restart. And Theo Hernandez helped and played a huge role in keeping this Milan team afloat. And then the help came, and he still performed. Got into some card trouble in some games. Scored a goal against Napoli, but he's the best left back. You could probably, this is a conversation that you can go back and forth with between Theo Hernandez and Robin Gosens over who the best left back in this league is. But the fact that right back is so bad, it's very easy to put both of them in this team.
100%. I think Theo Hernandez was a great find. Maldini meeting him in Ibiza, you thinking those that was all the way in my mind. But the fact that he comes in and there was expectations were a little mixed, right? Because he wasn't a guaranteed starter. He had to have some competition from Ricardo Rodriguez. Many thought, and even Rodriguez started the first couple games, if you recall, guys. Whether that's down to Gianpaolo's incompetence, that's a whole nother conversation to be had. But it was quite clear that
he was in the midfield.
When Theo Hernandez came in, and look, a player coming from Real Madrid and Real Sociedad, you got to have something in there, right? There's something in that game that's not being tapped into. Sure enough, Gomes comes to Milan, the place that many of these want-away players come to, and they just reestablish themselves. And Theo Hernandez was the breath of fresh air. I don't think many people anticipated this sort of impact. At one point, I think he was actually Milan's top goal scorer, which tells you a lot about how bad of a first half of the season that Milan have had offensively and just collectively. So Theo Hernandez, Gosens, we all know Gosens' impact in terms of the play style that Atalanta wishes to play. Not only that, his production in terms of goals and assists. I think he had maybe something like 8 goals, 6 assists. A Conte-like season, Conte's final season at Atalanta, he put up similar numbers. No brainers. I'll take Gosens out of his normal position because of the point you just made, Frank, of right back just being very much a shit show.
Yes. Martino, the two center backs. I think we've got two guys here that offer a very good blend of defensive positioning and awareness. Guys that are good on the tackle, guys that are good on the interception, but I think guys that also possess some technical quality in Stefan de Vrij and Francesco Acerbi.
How poetic we got both of these guys in here, right? One the replacement for the other. Acerbi stepped in once de Vrij went to Inter. Listen, de Vrij, he's one of the most underrated defensive players in recent memory. I mean, every time, no one's putting him in these conversations, where you see him on the internet or wherever you may be talking to people. De Vrij just doesn't come up, and he's been clearly Inter's best defender. I think he's
free
clearly
transfer too.
Free transfer,
Yep.
and the Dutch are terrifying on defense.
Yeah, they are.
They have De Ligt, Van Dijk, and De Vrij. And De Vrij isn't even close to being talked about as those two other guys. And Acerbi, man, love the guy. I mean, is there a better story out there in the league right now? Coming back from cancer, flopping at a club like Milan too, not having success there, and just building his way back up, and was a key cog to just being in this position right now.
And the national team picture too. Could possibly be the starter.
I'll be honest, Romagnoli is one of my favorite players, and he's my favorite player on this Milan team. Acerbi earns that spot on the national team over Romagnoli right now. And that I don't hate it. Yeah,
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Let's get into the midfield. And the two that we're putting in front of the back four, and we think this can work, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto, both of Lazio. These guys both. I mean, if you want an indicator of why Lazio were so bad last season and why they were so good this season, just look at the form of these two guys over a 38-game stretch. I mean, Sergei's head was turned last year. I mean, there was no question about it. I mean, I think those first few games of the 2018-2019 season, I'm watching him, and he had this body language like, why am I still here? And now he stayed. He seems to have his he might go. Who knows? Somebody might snap him up now. Luis Alberto got back into form and got back to being the playmaking midfielder that we saw from 2 seasons ago. These guys, I mean, Lazio had an incredible season this year. They exceeded everybody's expectations, and a lot of it had to do with the performance of these two men.
Yeah, Lazio, obviously, we everyone's been highlighting and giving the proper praise and attention to Immobile, rightfully so. But you could look in that squad and just find so many other players that are very much valuable to the season they had. Joaquin Correa is a player we didn't even mention. I think he's tortured Milan plenty of times, right? I think in the Coppa Italia most recently. But yeah, in that midfield, I think Luis Alberto is a player that you can expect him to get double-digit goals, double-digit assists. He's so influential to what Immobile is doing and has been doing at Lazio since he arrived. But Milinkovic Savic is a player that I know some people are very mixed on him in terms of what they think his ceiling can be, because I think the comparisons have always been coming in that he's like the Serbian Paul Pogba. He has a lot of these qualities. He's very well-rounded. His game is very polished, right, in terms of what he could provide a team. You started to see this year that he was very much a huge piece in that midfield. He kind of was a good contrasting midfielder to what we saw. Big, physical, right in the air, can contribute the occasional goal. I think he actually scored the winner goal against Inter earlier in the season. So I don't have any complaints with these two. I think they've been a team like Lazio had a great season, as you mentioned, and they deserve to have their fair share of entrance in this team.
The correlation is interesting, isn't it, Martino, with these two guys?
I mean, look, it's honestly unreal because Milinkovic Savic was probably the most disappointing player for me last season.
Oh, yeah.
And this was the guy that everyone knew. Like, this is why Lotito was shrewd for, he wanted over $100 million. And we saw that, right? Like, almost every single game they needed him to step up big in. I mean, that goal against Atalanta, I knew they ended up losing that match, but oh my God, that's the talent right there that you can see. And Luis Alberto, I mean, there's not many guys in Europe that play better balls than he does to some of his players. And you know what? The service is fantastic. The combination is great. And I think they were by far the 2 best midfielders that were in Serie A this season. I don't think it's even a conversation.
I think I think any manager that would have to face this 3-man attacking midfield in behind the striker, any manager that would have to prepare for this would just shit his pants about every 10 minutes. Domenico Berardi of Sassuolo, Papu Gomez of Atalanta, and Cristiano Ronaldo of Juventus. Wow. I mean, Sassuolo. I mean, first of all, I am so happy for Roberto De Zerbi that he's at a place where he can hang his hat and have his system and have his players and the run that Sassuolo went on here in the restart. And Sassuolo deserved to have a player in this team as a result of the way they played, the attractive. We joked all season and called them the fun bad team of Serie A because they were going to score so much, but they also weren't going to keep anybody out. And then they started getting results against big teams, and then you had to take a step back and say, "Whoa, these guys are good." And Domenico Berardi was at the epicenter of it all. Papu Gomez of Atalanta, Cristiano Ronaldo, we don't need to say a whole lot about these guys. I mean, they don't need endorsements from us to be in this team. They've year in and year out been consistent and gotten it done. But I'd like to highlight Berardi and his inclusion in this team, Matt.
Berardi's been fantastic, and I think he's been around such a long time. He's accrued so many appearances for Sassuolo. Obviously, everyone attributes him to being the one who got Max Allegri fired at Milan, but this season specifically, coming of age, right? I think one of his biggest issues is ever talent. I think everyone knew he had that in his locker. I think he's double-digit goals. I think something like 13, 14, double-digit assists. I mean, when you put up those numbers for a team like Sassuolo, who I kind of jokingly call Sassuolo, not Sassuolo, right? Atalanta light, because I think they play, fast-paced, possession-based football. They scored a lot of goals. To your point, they'll leak in quite a few. But the Derby has administered a really exciting style of football. And those front three, I think we could have that they deploy. You could probably interchange. If you would have told me I'm going to go with Caputo here, maybe to squeeze him in somehow because he had a great season. He had also had a lot of assists. Or Jeremy Boga, who is probably the best dribbler in Serie A, had 11 goals and 3 or 4 assists. But I think Berardi at his age, given all the pressure and all the people who overlooked him over the years as a player, like, okay, well, he's not going to go to a big club. He's probably not deserving of it. He's stuck in more of the middle ground of Serie A, which is nothing wrong with that. But Berardi showed everyone this year that the numbers he put up, the fact that he was able to tame that temperament that I think a lot of people knew he had, and that ultimately held him back from the next sort of level player. I think Berardi is a great inclusion here. I think you probably could have also gone Kulusevski. He was one of the younger players.
Sure.
That, 21, he was. Or no, you moved to Juve. That tells a lot. But Berardi's a great shout in the sense that he put up the double-digit goals and assists.
And I don't think I need to waste anybody's time by saying Ciro Immobile is our striker too, tying the single season record with 36 goals. I mean, that 4-man attack, Martino. If I had to prepare for that, that would keep me up at night.
I mean, look, it's honestly one of the better, overall attacks and seasons of all the combined players that we've seen in years too. I mean, that's kind of obvious because of how well everyone was doing. But I mean, listen, Immobile, for all that, there's so much pressure on him since it was like the U21s. I believe they lost against Spain, that Italian team. If you remember, it was a very talented Spain team versus a very talented Italian team. And the pressure was on from there. You saw it with Pescara, did great. They got moved up. He had that move, fantastic at Torino. Flopped technically in 2 places with Dortmund and Sevilla. Comes back, Lazio, very nice place for him. Big fish, small pond kind of guy, right? He deserved this. He is this talented and he is this good and he can step up. And you know what? He validated this now by scoring more goals than Cristiano Ronaldo when Cristiano scored over 30. That means something. So I hope for him, for his sake, for Azzurri fans' sake, that something like this carries over into the summer because then he could. Can you imagine Ciro Immobile's confidence if he plays well in an international tournament? Because he still has that, Ventura, shadow looming over his shoulders, right? I hate to bring it up. I'm sorry. But I mean, it's an amazing attack, and I've never seen anyone more deserving of it. And Frank, take another lap or a virtual lap because you say you get too tired. You hit the nail on the head. And I looked forward to your tweets every time that he scored a goal. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed it.
I think I got people blocking me because they got tired of me tweeting that every time he scored.
Oh, take it. It wasn't even like it was a surefire thing. It's like, I told you Cristiano Ronaldo was going to be
3-time Capo Canieri winner too. Like that's big. Like some
of the names he passed like Shevchenko on the all-time scoring list and said,
But I've said it often here on this podcast about. And because he's had his issues with Italy, Ventura aside, I mean, even under Mancini, we just haven't seen it yet from him. And I think I honestly think it's system related. I think in a 2-forward system, like he plays at Lazio, I mean, at Torino, why was he so good? He played with Cerci up front. Okay. He has a lot more freedom, can move around. He's got another guy absorbing attention from other defenders. When he's a lone striker in a 4-3-3, there's a multitude of things going on. I mean, most particularly in Mancini's 4-3-3, his left-sided guy is right-footed wanting to cut in. His right-sided guy is left-footed wanting to cut in. There's a lot of space being taken away from Ciro in that instance. And I don't think he's quite adapted to that yet. And I think that that's a system that he's just struggled in. And I think that that's why it hasn't worked as well at Italy. Has it worked against the Liechtensteins of the world? Absolutely. But when you squeeze them and have to play against a better team, there's some struggles there. I hopefully over the next year, there's time to rectify that.
There was a lot of misuse of the players too, that I think maybe attributed to Immobile not being or reaching the heights that he has reached at the domestic level. I think, you can look at the system, you can look at all the things, but it's really telling that the fact that, when Italy were just desperate to get into the World Cup for 2018, Ventura is looking to bring on De Rossi instead of Insigne. So that tells you that maybe a lot of these players weren't put in the best position to succeed.
I think we just have to scratch the 2 years of Ventura. I
Yeah.
mean, from
But I'm saying, but like in terms of the choice, I think he set a lot of players back.
sure.
And you're even starting to see it now. Like at that point in time, like everyone thought, okay, Chiesa probably should be getting more of attention. It took Jorginho until like what the final, I think, playoff against Sweden to actually get his cap with Italy, and he was one of the best midfielders Italy had. So I think again, it's going to be telling. The biggest test is going to be, can he do it? You know, when Italy are in this position, they're healthy. They have defensive options. They have a good goalkeeper. They have an abundance of midfielders who are very much quality who can service him. Now it's time to put up or shut up. And if he could produce and get some goals, I think he can get that monkey off his back, and I think it could go a long way for Italy.
2 snubs. Give me 2 snubs that aren't on this list that should be.
Ilicic.
Kulusevski.
Donnarumma. Matt saying Donnarumma and Kulusevski.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem with that. Martino?
I was going to say Ilicic and Donnarumma.
Ilicic and Donnarumma. I don't have a problem with Ilicic. And in fact, I think we had him in the half-season team. I think, it just these other guys finished the season, and I think it just was an issue. It was an issue of he didn't finish the season, ran into injuries, and it's just an unfortunate thing. There's no denying Josip Ilicic's talent, and I'll agree with you on the Ilicic snub. But man, for a second snub, I mean, I believe in this list too much. I'll say Donnarumma too. I'll take the shortcut.
I was just thinking of maybe Lautaro Martinez, maybe Brozovic, because I felt they both had really good seasons. But I think the fact that Milinkovic-Savic, like when you look who's ahead of them, you got to just like, I feel like, and that's what we talked about when we had the conversation before we even went live, is that this 11 just felt right. I know there was going to be some snubs and some room for interpretation, but I think the 11B are more or less hit pretty hard.
Yeah, I've got no issue with it. I mean, you could make a case for Duvan Zapata. You could make a case for Lukaku. I mean, there was a lot of exceptional performances delivered in Serie A. So that in mind, let's. I mean, a crap on a cracker manager 11. I think we're all in agreement is Marco Giampaolo, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of cheating a little bit because he only had 7 games, but man, I mean,
that's if you're that bad in 7 games, then you don't need a full season to prove that you're the worst, right?
I think it's the fact that in 7 games he not only didn't get results, he didn't play the guys like Benacer, he didn't play Teo Hernandez, but it's also telling the fact that he very much underachieved with a squad that we would later see that Pioli came in there and made this team were unbeaten from the restart. So I think we're 1 or 2, we're going to be top 3 in points in 2020. Whether you attribute that to Ibrahimovic is another conversation, but not playing Rebic, and Rebic was 11 goals in the second half of the season.
Sure.
So it's a culmination of things, and I think it's quite clear that Giampaolo, given the performance that Pioli was able to get from this team, that he's the guy for that.
I'll do one more snub that's going to be a little bit biased, and it's Frank Kessie. Just because I think that once Pioli came in and simplified his role, you saw what Frank Kessie could be. I mean, in Gattuso's 4-3-3, I think he was asked to handle a hell of a lot more than what he's capable of doing. He's basically running 110-yard doggies from an inside right midfield position, where now he's part of a double pivot with Benacer. It's a lot simpler for him. He can have that occasional run in the box like he did against Juve. But his game got simplified, and by his game getting simplified, he stood out. And sometimes that happens when a player is asked to play a simple game, they can stand out by doing that. So just another.
I don't want to go too much onto the Milan players, but I think with Kessie, I think he's a player like Hakan, like some of these other guys over the years who have gotten so much stick and so much criticism.
Yep.
Kessie was a guy who came in the same that big huge 2017 Mercado, all this expectation because of what he accomplished at Atalanta.
Sure.
Big fee. Got to understand, the guy's 23. The guy plays pretty much every game. He played pretty much 90 minutes every game. And if you have that availability in the midfield that Milan have been lacking for years, in addition to Benacer, I know someone commented on that. That was a good shot, Frank. I think Frank Kessie giving him that proper credit and recognition was fair.
Our snubs make the substitute bench. Let's just leave it at that. So,
yeah.
Manager of the season, and I'm going to go first on this one. And my manager of the season is Gianpiero Gasperini. Before the season, we looked at this and said, okay, you're in the Champions League. You have distractions now. You can't do this again. Well, they did it again, and they finished 3rd. This is Atalanta we're talking about here. The Atalanta I remember, while you guys were dating cheerleaders, was just trying to stay up. Okay. Yeah. And now, I mean, they're a powerhouse, and they went to the Champions League, and we saw the first 3 games, and we're like, oh God, this isn't going to end well. And then Manchester City does them a solid by getting their goalkeeper and their backup goalkeeper sent off to where Kyle Walker plays in goal. They get a point out of that. They win their next 2 games and do just enough to qualify, shred Valencia, and has everybody talking that they can beat PSG. A year ago, we are not talking about Atalanta having a chance in hell at beating PSG. Okay, and then also being able to get them back into third and back into the Champions League next season and scoring 98 goals. And not, Zapata scored a lot of goals. Gomez was instrumental. Ilicic till he got hurt. But they found other guys to do it. Malinovsky, Muriel, Pasalic. My God, if Muriel started every game, he would have gotten over 30 goals too. I mean, and the job this guy did is astonishing. It's one of the best managers. He exceeded my expectations this year. He's got my vote for manager of the season.
Yeah, I'm not going to debate that. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I think you're right. But I guess I got to be a contrarian here and go with the guy, Simone Inzaghi. I mean, look, this is relative to expectations once again. I did not have Lazio in the conversation for even going to the Champions League, right? No one did. And if you did, you're a liar. And that's just, I don't know how to prove it, but you are. So at the end of the day, just, there's not a lot of depth on this team. There isn't that much to work with in terms of budgets. It's still a high-pressure job being in the capital there. You're in the shadow of Roma. Often, just because Roma has more fans than they do. He had him there. I mean, you lose the De Vrij, right? Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto didn't do that great the season prior to that. There's a lot of pressure on you. He exceeded it. Like, what they did was just unbelievable. And they were fearless against Juve. There hasn't been a team in a while that looked that fearless against them and really slapped them around in those games. And he won trophies to back it up too. Sure. So kudos to him. Congratulations on a great season. And for me, it would have been Gasperini, but I got to change it up. So Inzaghi gets it for me.
Matt, break the tie or go on your own. Either way.
I want to go Gasperini, but my heart is telling me to go Pioli. And the reason why I'm going Pioli is because I think, again, from the time he stepped in as coach, the actual drastic change in this team and the drastic change in the fan base perception of the team where they're going, and the fact they were unbeaten from the restart, the fact that in 2020, I think they were amongst the top 2 or top 3 teams in terms of points.
They finished second in points since 2020.
It's difficult mid-season to come into a job like this, especially with how dysfunctional Milan have been. And not only that, with Pioli having all the pressure of Ralf Rangnick and the players coming in, is Ibrahimovic going to do this? Is he just going to be a player who could score goals for them? And the fact that he comes in and gets the results, but then he also has Hakan playing like the out-of-body sort of player where you're like, where was this guy? Kestia, Nasser, Simon Kjaer, like getting these players to not only get results, but to like play above their level and play a level that we haven't seen in years. I think he's a great shot. I think if for me, my choice would be Gasperini because I think you have to feel like you have to give it to him. But if we're talking about going against the norm here, I think Pioli is a fair shout, just considering the fact that with what he had to deal with coming into this position before he even signed Pioli out, was being flooded in the tweets by Milan, tells you something that I think he changed the belief system that Milan have. And I think the fans are really backing him. And I think it's a credit to him for someone who, again, Milan's one of the more difficult jobs in Europe, and he came in there and he did what he did. So kudos to him, but I'm going to go Gasperini.
Okay. I built that Pioli in Ireland. I was the only one. I felt like I was the only one not saying Pioli out.
I was just giving the guy a chance. Like,
yeah,
I wasn't on the Pioli out, but I wasn't. I wanted to pay Spalletti.
Like, you give the guy a chance, let him coach. Like, let's see what he does. Like, no one liked Gattuso, and Gattuso he did a good job. So,
Yep. So let's just hope that he can hang his hat here, and that it's not a shelf life, and it doesn't burn out like he's done at other destinations. It's the only thing you can think of. Okay, player of the season. I'll go first on this one. It's Ciro Immobile. 36 has only been done one other time. Penalties, no penalties. It's still impressive. Probably the tip of the iceberg of a great season for Lazio. And, it's like I said, and CR7 breathing down your neck for the scoring title too, to be able to accomplish all of that and get to 36 and to match what Gonzalo Higuain did a few seasons ago. I think all of that makes Ciro Immobile my player of the season. Martino.
Yeah, no argument. I mean, it's not even, you can't. It's just 36 is 36. And honestly, like, even if Cristiano got the same amount of goals, he really did not show up in some games. I'll be honest with you. There were some games where you watch Cristiano Ronaldo, you're like, that's not right. It looks like Father Time might be catching up to him. With Ciro, maybe one or two games tops where I said, that guy doesn't look like he has it today. For the most part, he had it almost every single week. And he matched one of the toughest records you could ever match in any sport, along with one of the greatest of all time, breathing down your neck. So it's
nearly a goal per game in leagues.
It's unbelievable.
A lot of people will go with Ronaldo because he's on the team that won the title, and I have nothing against that. No, if you went with Ronaldo, I would say fine, no problem. He had over 30 goals. I mean, he had a great season. But to Martino's point, I think there was a point in time this season where Ronaldo wasn't hot. He had a great stretch towards the second half of the season where he was, I think, like something like 18, 19 goals in like 20, 21 games.
He scored like in 13 straight matches. Yeah.
Over the entire season, Immobile was more consistent. And again, I think what kind of leans in his favor is the fact that he also had the assists too. And he also had the golden boot around Europe and beat Ronaldo, Lewandowski, who had a fantastic season for Bayern Munich, and Lionel Messi, who had, I think, the first guy to have a 2020 season since Thierry Henry. So that tells you he is rightfully so the guy who's been the player of the year.
Awesome. We're unanimous on that. I think that's going to be the unanimous decision among all of Calcio Twitter, I think. Speaking of Calcio Twitter, let's hand out an award that Martino's nominated for here. Who won Calcio Twitter? Your guys' first chance to be involved in this. So we have a couple of nominations here. We got a handful of nominations. Let me go through all of them. I will put the hashtag on and say this one is on the board. So here are the ones we were reviewing this week. We will start with Chloe Beresford from the Serie A show in regard to Atalanta playing Inter. Just tuning in to Atalanta v Tablecloth FC. So
in reference to Inter's jerseys, right?
Yeah, we are not getting away from bad mouthing that away kit, are we?
It looked like your nonna's washcloth that she has in her drawer to clean up stuff. That's what their jersey looks like. So
I think we had a previous nominee start a tic-tac-toe game on it. So the people are having a blast with that one. The real Don Agnelli. Always, he's always making this list, I think. Wishing a tremendous and happy 94th birthday to at SSC Napoli. Wow, it seems like just yesterday that you sold your first dime bag of pot. Now look at how far you've come. As they say, they grow up so fast.
It's the funniest account on Calcio Twitter. I really believe that. If
you're a Calcio fan and you're not following that account, you are living life wrong, just totally wrong. All right, at Wise Old BHJ, Brian Johnson is back on the board, and this was in regard to Milan's game against Cagliari. The commentator on DAZN, depending on where you are, DAZN, ESPN Plus. This guy mispronouncing all these names is like having a bunch of new signings.
Oh, the Chanalulu and that was
Piolo. The funniest was that he reacted to a replay of Donnarumma making a save, and he thought it was a live play.
Yeah.
He didn't know it was a replay, and he starts freaking out like, "Oh my God, Donnarumma with this!" It was like didn't that just happen? Like that's in slow mo right now. I thought I was losing my mind. So
it was pretty bad.
It was so bad.
Another Serie A show host, John Solano, at Solano_56. A sensational bit of self-sabotage from Fiorentina as they announced they are keeping Beppe Iacchini as their manager for next season. An incredibly stupid decision. I agree. Iacchini getting another year at Fiorentina, something I don't know if Comiso is really that great of an owner.
Comiso, also the fact that he kept Montella on after nearly getting them relegated tells you a lot too.
Anyone who wears a hat with a suit is not okay in my book. So
that's your Mihailovic. I'll let it slide.
Mihailovic is permitted
a
to
hat
wear
on too now, so he looks really really sharp.
He gets a pass.
Although, if you guys remember Cersei Cosme? I don't know if he's still coaching anymore.
Yeah.
He had the little again, the old man hat going. He could pull it off. So our guest here, Martino Puccio, from a tweet from July 29th, a video tweet of him giving eloquent commentary to Gianluigi Donnarumma saving a penalty from Fabio Quagliarella. Follow at Martino Puccio, July 29th. I'm not going to repeat it. Just go back. Go look.
It's not appropriate. I was tamed. It's just I'm surprised I got nominated. I'm not. These are way funnier the previous tweets. This was I'm just saying it's cool to be nominated. I guess when I'm on here.
Don Totti at Zaniolo_fan, July 29th. Milan 7 UCL, Inter treble, Juve 25 Scudetti, Roma beautiful kits. Actually, I think their new kits are trash, but
I'm not a fan of them either.
No, I don't like them.
I don't get the obsession.
Fans tripping a lot lately. I don't know why.
It's what they do. I have no idea.
And then finally, Penne Advocate at _Corsaro. Napoli, Serie C 1, Coppa Italia 2, Supercoppa 1 in the last 20 years with a meme with Mahatma Gandhi that says absolute scenes. Get in, lads. I think that one wins.
I got such a great reaction. The funny thing is too is that I think Calcio Twitter is undefeated. I think if you just peel back the layers of Calcio Twitter and you go into the actual team fan bases and you look at the tweets from Milan Twitter, oh my goodness! I've never laughed so hard, but I think that's a great one. That's a great one.
I think our winner, Richard's winner a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember who said it. He says it's so great to see Milan scoring so many goals against small clubs like Lecce, Bologna, and Juventus. So
I remember that one actually.
Yeah. So that and the at Didi away with his each player that he hates from every Serie A team. His little thread. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Yeah. I did see that one.
That inspired this segment of our podcast. So I'm with the Mahatma Gandhi meme. I think it's classic. It's not something you would expect him. It just works. So
Gandhi and Serie A is not a combo I ever thought of. So
at the _Corsaro, Corsaro, if you want to give him a follow. Quick one, guys. Next season, top 4. Well, let's answer Tarong's question.
That's a funny avatar, first off. I'm going to go Juve. We pick in the actual order itself, or we're just going to do the 4 teams to make Champions League?
Yeah, you don't have to predict the champion now. Just go top 4. Okay. Yeah, any order.
Going Juve, Inter, Atalanta, Milan.
I like that too. I'll go with that. I'll be lazy. Martino?
I'm actually gonna knock us out of it. Put Napoli back up there.
You're not a believer, man.
No, maybe it'll just be a reverse jinx. I don't know. Maybe
you think
I had us in 4th this season, and we was bad.
Or you think Osimhen scoring 30? I'd put Milan top 4 every year. It's like answering.
Right.
It's like
they're capable of it. They're going to be in it to the last match week. Absolutely.
It's like playing Jeopardy and answering everyone saying, "What is the Mississippi River?" Eventually, you're going to be right.
It's true. So. That's true. Yeah. Look, I mean, there's no way. I'll say this: I don't think there's any way Lazio makes it back in the top 4.
I agree.
Perhaps the easiest out of the top 4.
I think both Rome clubs will be out for sure. So
Rome is not. They're not even on my radar. I don't even know how they're going to replace Chris Smalling at this point.
Sure.
Come back.
So we went a little bit longer than I expected, and I appreciate you guys taking the time here. But we will put a bow on this 2019-2020 season and this edition of Serie A Sit Down, and I'm going to allow our guests a little time to shameless plug. Martino?
Oh, okay, sure. I'll go first. You just follow me at Martino Puccio. There won't really be any cussing videos anytime soon. Watch a lot of basketball and other sports as well. State of Play podcast we do with Matt as well. So subscribe, follow, like it. There's a bunch of statistics on Calcio that we put up there as well. So you see some of those graphics. And thank you so much, Frank, for having us on. So I always hop in, get to see you guys when Miguel was on here a couple of weeks ago. Milan Miguel, nice guy, and Richard as well. Hope you're enjoying vacation. So
Awesome. Matt?
Sure. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Matt_Santangelo, as Martino mentioned. State of Play Pod. Support the podcast. We cover Europe's top 5 leagues plus a little bit of Major League Soccer. We just had our 50th episode. We, throughout the entire COVID situation, we've made some really great strides, including being nominated for the Football Content Awards as Best New Content Creator, getting a sponsorship for our YouTube channel and our podcast with The Athletic. And on our 50th episode, we just had Matteo Benetti on. So just support us there. Subscribe on Spotify, iTunes. You guys can follow us there. And yeah, we appreciate all the support you've been giving us really the past 2 years since it started.
Awesome. I'm at FTC_21, mainly talking calcio. We'll randomly get in a few sports, seeing my Bucks are about 5 points behind the Rockets right now, but Giannis is
DFS stuff too, right?
Yeah, DFS stuff too. And I got smoked in Serie A this weekend. So
I never play. I don't dabble in it. I got burnt with all my Serie A bets this year, so I didn't want to even try.
I nearly took down the contest on Wednesday where I had Cranio in goal and he had the 10 saves on Juve. So, and I had Diawara just kind of as a punt, and Roma let him take a penalty. So that was pretty sweet. But anyway, I'm at FTC_21, Calcio, DFS, other sports, random stuff. You can find there. Serie A Sit Down, we have our own channel on Apple Podcasts, on SoundCloud. You can find us on Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever podcasts are played. You can find Serie A Sit Down. You know the YouTube channel. You got it here. Subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed the content. Definitely do that for us. It helps us out. At Serie A Sit Down on Twitter and Instagram. We're also available on Facebook. So we've hit up all the social media platforms that faithfully married men are allowed to hit. So, now I've lost my train of thought. The chat, thank you guys for stepping in. Thank you for your questions. And most importantly to the listeners, thank you all. And I say this at the end of every season. Without you, we can't do this. So as long as you keep listening, we're going to keep putting out Serie A Sit Down podcast, and this is the completion of our 4th season. We've been very, very blessed, and to be able to have connections with people like Martino and Matt to be able to jump on and our guests throughout the season. Thank you all very much. So, don't blink. We're probably going to have a podcast recapping what went on in Europe over the next week or two involving the Italian teams, and then we'll start the ramp up for the 2020-2021 season. So be on the lookout for all of that. So, and Martino, Matt, much appreciated. Thank you guys for coming in. We're going to have you on. We're going to have you on again soon. Okay.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. It was a great time.
All right. And for that, yep. And for Martino and for Matt and for Richard, I'm Frank. Thank you as always for listening. And as always, be sure you tell your paisans about us. Ciao.
Ciao.
Make it bounce.
I got to have Richard do a shorter outro than that. That felt long.
I liked it. I liked the music.
Yeah. So,
Good.
no, thank you guys again. We'll have Richard does the editing. Well, there's not going to be much editing. It's going to be on this YouTube channel, and Richard's just going to grab this recording and throw it on our podcast. So when we have that, we'll tag you. So please retweet and share it. And,
100%.
You ever need me to come on State of Play? I'd be more than happy to more than happy to join you guys. So
Of course.
Thank you. It was a ton of fun.
I'm cheap. It doesn't cost anything to have me on. So,
Of course.
No,
Appreciate it.
trust me. Yeah, you're good.
all right, good stuff, boys. Let's hope for a big season for Milan next year. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're
Absolutely.
going to kill it for sure.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your summers. We'll be talking soon. Okay.
Yes, enjoy the game tonight.
Again.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.